Hello and welcome to Starting Points. I'm your host, Jay Brenneman, bringing to you the voices of change in your communities and our region. Joining me today is Dave Dieter, Executive Director of the NRO. Dave, thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here, Jay.
Well, first off, tell me what the NRO stands for.
The NRO is the Neighborhood Resource Organization. It's a component of the Unified Erie Violence Reduction Initiative, countywide initiative that's been in existence for about 4 years now.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the initiative. You said it's been around for a little bit. What is the key goal or mission of that initiative?
It's primarily to focus on crime and, in particular, violent crime. It's a three-pronged approach. It includes prevention, enforcement, and reentry. And on the prevention arm, 2 years ago, we created the Community Action Plan, which was a result of extensive research and analysis of data that identified what the primary risk factors were that lead to problem behaviors, and then strategies were developed for each of those primary risk factors to address the root causes of crime.
Okay, so the key goal is to reduce and end crime, particularly violent crime.
Right.
And you said countywide.
Correct.
Now, the Community Action Plan, who did that involve in the planning stages?
That was a very inclusive process. There were upwards of 60 individuals representing a number of agencies, organizations, offices. Residents also were involved in that. The lead on that was the Mercyhurst Civic Institute, which is a research institute. So they did the bulk of the data gathering and analysis and led that process.
So it's a data-driven process, data-driven initiative.
Correct.
Was there an event or something that precipitated it, or was it just the conditions were worsening to the point where somebody said, hey, we need to make this happen?
Yeah, there were a couple things that were in play at the time that this got launched. First, from a historical standpoint, the city had a designation through the state for a weed and seed initiative.
And what is weed and seed?
Weed and seed is, it's modeled after a federal program. Weeding is law enforcement, strategic enforcement of criminals, violent criminals, drug dealing, things of that nature. And then the seeding comes in on the back end. It's more of a neighborhood revitalization approach, building community capacity and trying to build efficacy within the community.
Okay, so it's kind of evolved from a couple of things and a couple of different processes, both federal and state and regional. Mm-hmm. What are some of the key things that have carried on throughout this evolution?
First and foremost is the bottom-up approach. Not only soliciting community input, but community engagement. And
what would be the difference between, and what is that difference?
Community input is typically reaching out, getting folks to provide comment and concerns, but then it sort of ends there. Not in all cases, but you take that information and then you develop it.
So the experts take this feedback, they still make the decisions, but that's different than the actual engagement.
Engagement, right, is actual active participation on the part of residents and stakeholders throughout the entire process.
So they're helping, leading, and steering in and coming up with the solutions.
Right.
Has there been an uptake in crime or violence overall, regionally, or is it just an ongoing problem that hasn't really been solved?
Yeah, we've seen a definite uptick in the violence, primarily in the city. More specifically with the shooting incidents, which everyone's familiar about. But also, there's a cause for that, and that's what this process is all about. Is looking down, drilling down deeper, identifying what's going on in the background that's leading to this type of behavior. So those are the types of issues that we're trying to address.
Okay, so this has all led to what's now the NRO, the Neighborhood Resource Organization. Right. How long has the NRO been in place?
The NRO has been in existence for 10 months now.
And you've been on from the start or near the start?
Correct.
What was that like, starting up the NRO?
It was very exciting and a challenge. But coming from, my background experience was with the Weed and Seed Initiative. I was involved in that from 2002 through roughly 2011 when the funding started going away and things wound down. But my background is really in community revitalization. I worked for the city Department of Economic and Community Development for over 18 years, and my forte was neighborhood revitalization, particularly in the inner city neighborhoods. So it was a great opportunity for me to apply the type of experience and the things that I really enjoy doing in one job, and building a foundation from the ground up. And it's been really exciting and rewarding.
So you've been working in this field for quite a bit. So when you joined the NRO, you brought with you a host of experiences and perhaps connections with the community.
Yeah, and that's what's really important, is that I stress that in order to achieve anything, you really need to have those connections, those relationships, building trust, and having those primary connections, but then also having your partners bring other folks to the table. It's really about relationships.
How long has it, how easy is it, how easy is it to, or how hard is it to develop these relationships? And were there lessons learned along the way, maybe early on in your 18 years or even now, that you've perhaps come across?
Right, yeah, certainly, and that's, the experience with Weed and Seed really underscored the fact that there needs to be a grassroots approach, bottoms-up approach. I was involved in governmental programs that were canned, one-size-fits-all. You drop it in a neighborhood, and there's absolutely no buy-in because the residents didn't have any.
Yeah, so what does that buy-in mean? Is it as easy as going into a community and say, look at this great program, we're going to be bringing in money and resources, or is it much harder than that? What does that buy-in entail?
We don't presume to know what the issues are, so we do a lot of active listening, and I'm beyond the point now of being surprised, in most cases about what I hear, because each community is unique. Each block, or a couple blocks at a time, are unique, and in order to really have any effect, you need to sit down and talk with the folks that are living there and experiencing the chaos, the challenges on a day-to-day basis, and then be able to take that information and create the type of information and tools that they need.
So the goal is to create those tools based on what they see on the ground, boots on the ground, so to speak.
Correct.
Throughout, or in your experiences, the buy-in of the community, is there any cynicism about other, just people coming in and wanting to do something? Are there barriers to that, or perceptions of tried and failed, or just a perception of that?
Yeah. What we're very sensitive to and aware of is that there have been attempts in the past, not necessarily a crime reduction initiative, but community revitalization, neighborhood revitalization approaches where there's a lot of flash and sizzle to begin with, and there's talk about what we're going to do, and then a fair
starts off with sound
number.
bites and
Right.
Media and the press conferences.
Right.
But then afterwards, the people are left around looking.
Right.
Where's it at?
So there's a real sense of apathy, and I get that. So our approach is we're not going to talk about what we're going to do 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road. We'll announce it when it happens, because again, that's part of building trust, building credibility. Folks want to see something happen now. They don't want to necessarily listen to someone talk about what they're going to do.
Now, is this a game changer? Is this different, particularly for the Erie region or the county? Or some of these communities, is this really, are they used to seeing something like this approach?
Yeah, not really. And the approach that we're using with the community action plan is actually a public health model. Again, talking about addressing the root causes, just like when you're being treated for heart disease. You look at genetics, you look at exercise, you look at diet. So that's the type of approach we're taking, And the fact that it is a very inclusive, community-driven partnership, collaborative, if you will, effort, that is unique. And in fact, when the Community Action Plan was developed in 2012, Erie County was recognized as the Coalition of the Year by the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency for that approach and making that happen. And that approach is being used as a model elsewhere in the state. So it is unique, yes.
I want to touch on that quickly. So Erie was recognized out of, what was the competition like, or what was the field like as far as the cities or region? Like, what is that?
It's typically county or regions.
Okay,
I don't have that number.
There's 67 counties
Correct.
in the state, and so
Right.
that's interesting. Since it is new and different, I imagine there's probably some learning or some training or some explaining, at least to both community organizations and partners, but also to the citizens. Can you tell me what that experience is when you come in and say, look, we're here to listen, we're here to develop something based on your needs and desires and your goals. What kind of, what's that been like? I mean, how hard is it for somebody to see that different model?
Well, the approach we take is active listening at a neighborhood group meeting. And if I could just digress a little bit. Sure. There, I hope you never hear me say neighborhood watch. Because that has a crime connotation. We realize crime is important, but we're about positive change and holistic change. So we don't use neighborhood watch, we use neighborhood group, neighborhood association.
Because there are a variety of such
sure.
groups and
Yeah.
organizations.
Right.
And I guess it goes back to the different, you said the holistic approach. So not just looking at one way, a traditional way of fighting a certain problem is to say, here's the problem, here's the hammer, but more looking at all those tools.
Right.
But Dave, we're going to take a break right now.
Sure.
We'll be back with Dave Dieter, the Executive Director for the NRO, after these messages.
The NCAA Division II student-athlete experience goes beyond the classrooms and playing fields. It means a commitment to service and community, helping organizations like the Make-A-Wish Foundation by raising money to help grant the wishes of children with life-threatening medical conditions. Kids like Jacob.
Some student-athletes gave of their time and their energy to raise the money.
It was fun to meet Jeff Gordon.
NCAA Division II, training student-athletes for lifelong achievement.
I got no pulse, so losing.
Charging. He's in main fit.
Shocking. Tries it road all the time. Just had a few drinks. Just can't be happening.
Are we clear?
Clear. We're just buzzed. Just buzzed. You didn't tell us that, sir. You're right. This isn't happening. You'll be fine.
I feel good.
Really? No, not really.
Buzz driving.
Clear.
Maybe we should stop acting like it's no big deal.
Shocking.
NCAA Division II has much to cheer about, as nearly 100,000 student-athletes compete with passion and pride. And I'm pleased to share the best news of all. Student-athletes are outperforming the rest of the D2 student body in graduation rates. Just another reason why you'll hear us say with pride, I chose Division II. Learn more at d2sa.org.
Welcome back to Starting Points. I am your host, Jay Brenneman. We're back with Dave Dieter, the Executive Director of the NRO. Dave, the first half of our segment, we talked about what the NRO is and what it does and how it progressed to this level, to its creation 10 months ago, or when you took the position. You talked about a holistic approach to working with these communities, a grassroots approach, having the community members an active part of the process the whole way. Now, are there certain types of programming or training or resources specifically that you provide towards accomplishing that goal?
Yeah, and that is driven by the input from the residents and neighborhoods that we
And
talked
how do you
about
get
earlier.
that input?
Two ways. One is at our attendance at the individual neighborhood group meetings, but then we've also developed an information and training needs survey that we distribute online, hard copy, and we tabulate those results as they come in. And so we're using that information as the basis for carrying out workshops and other events to address what the community is telling us are their priority concerns or interests in building their capacity.
What kind of workshops are you hosting, or do you plan on hosting?
The first workshop we had was a capacity building workshop.
What's that? What does that mean?
Just organizational capacity, leadership tips and hints. How to run a neighborhood meeting, how to recruit folks to come to the table, taking responsibility, and also working with partners.
And what kind of partners are we talking about here?
Well, we promote what we call a neighborhood association model. So it would be a neighborhood group partnering with places of worship, schools, businesses, social service agencies, law enforcement, code enforcement, other governmental agencies and stakeholders, and bringing those folks to the table collectively so that they can begin developing a strategic plan for their own neighborhood to make it better.
Now, apart from the interest that the residents have for a safer, more strengthened and cohesive community, what are the benefits to some of these other organizations or groups, to the faith groups or to the businesses? What do they get out of participating?
Well, as I try to present this and recruit partners to the table, my pitch is we're all in this together. Convenience stores, they're neighborhood based typically. They experience many of the same issues and problems that the residents experience. So collectively, if we can address what's going on, try to turn things around in a positive direction, it benefits everybody.
So ultimately, are there reduction in costs, hopefully, for government agencies? Is there something to that you could speak on?
Right. I'm with law enforcement, code enforcement primarily. Just the fact that we have those individuals and those agencies at the table, they have a better understanding of what's going on in a community, and then there's sidebar conversations. There's more information being shared, so it eliminates a lot of the extensive time that law enforcement, for example, would have to undertake in investigating a crime or investigating an issue. We hope that we're going to build the type of relationship where the residents are going to have the trust, and it's going to be mutual trust and respect, where that information is going to flow a lot more freely.
So it's an added benefit for everyone, so everybody's not starting from scratch on solving some of these things. So
right.
The community members don't have to go out there and find the resources or information from the start. Same with law enforcement or the code enforcement. Now, what are the different relationships that on this type of issue that obviously with law enforcement there's the expenses and of maintaining a safe community, but with code enforcement, what role does code enforcement have in the process?
Well, we're actually starting kind of a little pilot initiative now with addressing nuisance properties. And
what's a nuisance property?
That could be property maintenance issues, it could be criminal issues, it could be trash and debris, garbage, things that are hazardous to not only to the tenant's health, but the neighbor's health, piled up in the backyard, if you will. So the way this is working, and it's still growing and evolving, is that the residents of the neighborhood are identifying problem properties. They're bringing that to the attention of law enforcement, code enforcement, and more recently, the Erie County Department of Health is getting involved in this as well. So those three agencies are reviewing the situation, and the NRO is sending a letter to the property owner advising the owner of what the issues are. And we're very careful about making sure that we have factual information when we do that. But just asking them to address the issues. But on that same letter, we're copying our partner agencies. So you know, we're hoping that this is going to be part of a continuum of property maintenance all the way through you know, blighted property. You know, that's not our focus. There's other folks doing that. But if we can turn some of these problem properties around early on, they're not going to get worse, and they're not going to get to a blighted state.
Because once they get to a blighted state, it has an effect, right? Almost, you would say, a domino effect on a variety of other issues that a community faces.
Right.
So, in these workshops and these meetings or these facilitated events that the NRO hosts and will be hosting, how is this different? Is it set up like a town hall, or is it different than that?
Well, the last event that we had was a criminal justice community forum. We had 11 representatives from the criminal justice system, assistant U.S. attorney, district attorney, county judge, adult probation, juvenile probation, and we did a brief overview of the criminal justice system in general.
To residents from the area.
Right. And then we opened it up for questions. So we had a moderated question and answer session, and we had 70 people in attendance for this event, which we were extremely pleased with. We've been averaging somewhere between 35 and 50, but the attendance indicated the interest in the community in this subject. So the response and the reviews that we got afterwards were just very, very positive and appreciative. So we're looking at that as kind of being a launch pad for having further discussion, focusing on specific elements within the criminal justice system. We had an exit survey that gave folks the opportunity to identify those specific aspects.
So for the forum, those that were on the panel, law enforcement and those involved in the criminal justice system, but also the citizens, what was maybe the takeaways or some of the things that benefited either party in participating in this?
Well, one of the most common comments that I received from the citizens was that they received a wealth of education on how the justice system works. And you know, one of the biggest questions was, you know, we know someone was arrested in our neighborhood, but then within a week or two, they're back. How does that happen? So there was a discussion about, you know, the whole issue of you know, bond, and you know, that they can be free pending their trial. And it was those types of questions that folks just weren't sure of, and they were able to get direct answers. And you know, to a person, the panel stayed around afterwards, and they entertained one-on-one questions with folks. There was a good bit of that taking place.
So breaking up of division or boundaries between the community and some of these participants in the forum. So, and it gives them a chance to speak with, because naturally when they're dealing with some of the community members, it's often not in the best of cases, right? I mean, they're working with those who've been, you know, on trial or adjudicated or something to that effect. So I'm sure that was interesting for them. Now, where do you see in the 10 months, and you've seen the growth, and of course having been there decades prior in the different community process, where do you see the NRO growing and the work that is capable of doing regionally?
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, we need to be focused on the fact that this is a countywide initiative. So we need to establish ourselves in communities outside of the city of Erie. You know, we recognize that the majority of the issues, and you know, to a certain extent, the bigger problems are at the city. but we are mindful that this is a countywide initiative. So we're beginning to make those inroads. Mill Creek Township, McCain Township.
Building those relationships just as you
Right.
did in some of these neighborhoods. It's
Right.
just the same as any other.
Right. And what's happening in those communities is important. It is important, and we understand that. And a lot of the smaller communities in the county, rightfully so, feel that they've been neglected and ignored, and we want to be there to provide whatever assistance we
It's
can.
real easy to focus on the city, particularly when it's the namesake, same as the county, and
Right.
but you get outside the city boundaries or south of I-90, and there's a rather large region out there with
There is.
2/3 of the county population live outside
Right.
the city, and
Right.
poverty is much the same rural as well. And of course, they're not spared the violence. Tell us a little bit about how, if people want to learn more, whether it's public officials or citizens or organizations, if they want to learn more about the NRO, if they want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Okay. Well, the primary source of information is our website. That's nroerie.org. And we have a Facebook page as well. My phone number is area code 814-434-8294.
They can call you with any questions and invite you down to their communities and learn more.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I appreciate you being here today, Dave. Thanks for shedding some light on the NRO and some of the issues that are happening in our communities, and for demonstrating a different way of doing things for our communities.
Thank you. I was glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of Starting Points. We will see you next time.